The sinister truth behind Pecos Bill. How America used him to rewrite the Wild West. You've heard of him. The cowboy who roped tornadoes, drank rivers, and rode panthers through the desert. Pecos Bill wasn't just a legend. He was a legend. The symbol of the wild, fearless, all-American cowboy. Kids adored him. Adults celebrated him. But what if I told you he wasn't real, and worse, he wasn't harmless? What if his story was never meant to entertain, but to erase? Man Detective, before we dig deeper, make sure to subscribe for more untold truths and click the like button if you're ready to challenge what you've always believed. Because buried behind the laughter and tall tales lies a calculated decision to rewrite the West with one loud, white, fictional hero while silencing thousands of real ones. Black cowboys, Mexican vaqueros, native warriors, all swept aside so Pecos Bill could stand alone, grinning on a horse made of myth. But who created him? And why? This story isn't about the cowboy you think you know. It's about the voices he replaced, the history he helped bury, and the unsettling truth behind the smile. Let's pull back the curtain on America's most exaggerated lie. Pecos Bill was the kind of cowboy who could lasso a tornado, ride a mountain lion like a horse, and gulp down rivers when he got thirsty. At least that's how the stories go. For generations, he was the face of American bravery, the untamable hero of the frontier, bigger than life, funnier than fiction. In children's books, school plays, and old-time radio shows, he symbolized the kind of West every kid wanted to believe in, wild, dangerous, but conquerable by the right kind of man, the kind who wrestles chaos and comes out grinning. He was raised by coyotes, married a woman who rode a catfish, and invented everything from rodeos to cowboy hats. None of it made sense, but that was the point. Pecos Bill wasn't meant to be real. He was meant to be legendary. A harmless tall tale, a laugh over a campfire. Or so it seemed, because while kids marveled at his antics, adults embraced him as a symbol of what made America great. Strength, independence, and dominance over nature. The line between fairy tale and national myth blurred fast. What most people don't realize is that Pecos Bill wasn't passed down from old cowboy mouths or frontier diaries. He wasn't part of ancient folklore whispered through generations. He was born in a 1923 Century magazine story, written by a white man for a white audience, romanticizing a West that never was. His lasso didn't just catch tornadoes. It looped around history, dragging it into a neat, heroic narrative that left a lot of truth behind. As America moved into the 20th century, it needed legends to build a shared identity. Pecos Bill became the ultimate cowboy not because he was real, but because he was useful. He made the West look like a playground for white male bravery, erasing the blood, the theft, the indigenous resistance. The absurdity of his tales distracted from the brutality of what really happened, and who it really happened to. Laugh enough, and you stop questioning what's under the joke. But here's the twist. While Pecos Bill soared into legend, the real cowboys, the ones who broke horses, slept under stars, and bled on stolen land, were being erased. And that wasn't an accident. The myth had a mission. It was time to ask, why this cowboy? Why this story? And who was America trying to forget? Pecos Bill didn't emerge from a campfire story passed down through generations. He was born on paper. In 1923, writer Edward O'Reilly published him in the Century magazine, presenting the tale as if it were old folklore. It wasn't. He invented Pecos Bill from scratch, crafting an all-American cowboy so exaggerated he'd outshine any real legend. And it worked. Within a decade, the story was everywhere, animated in cartoons, celebrated in children's books, and even included in school curriculums. But behind this cheerful invention, something much darker was happening. History was being replaced. At the same time O'Reilly was popularizing Pecos Bill, the real history of the West was being scrubbed clean. By then, scholars estimate that nearly a quarter of all working cowboys had been black. Mexican vaqueros were the first true cowboys on the continent. Native Americans had their own deep connection to land, one often soaked in blood after forced removal. But none of them looked like Bill. Instead, he was white, loud, fearless, and unshakably American. He was exactly the kind of character America wanted to see, and precisely the kind it needed to distract from everyone else. The timing was no accident. The early 20th century saw a wave of Western films and pulp magazines that glorified white settlers and vilified everyone else. It was an era of cultural sanitization, where history became entertainment. Pecos Bill wasn't alone. He was part of a deliberate campaign to reshape public memory. His tall tales masked the brutal truth. The West wasn't won by heroic gunslingers. It was taken through systemic violence, displacement, and labor stolen from marginalized groups. And yet, none of that pain made it into the legend. Just laughs, lasso tricks, and ridiculous adventures. Mini twist. In 1937, a Disney short film introduced Pecos Bill to millions of children. This version erased its darker edges and fully sanitized the myth. Meanwhile, real cowboys of color were being left out of textbooks, museums, and movies. Their stories were deemed unmarketable, not suitable for the shiny myth America was building. Pecos Bill became the official poster boy of the West, and his very absurdity made him perfect for rewriting history. The louder the fiction, the quieter the truth became. And so we're left with the question, if Pecos Bill was created from nothing, while others were erased from everything, then what was his real purpose? Was it just a fun distraction, or a cultural weapon aimed at the past? Before Pecos Bill ever twirled a lasso, the American frontier was shaped by people whose names were deliberately erased. The Wild West wasn't a stage for white heroes. It was a complex, brutal place where survival belonged to anyone tough enough to claim it. Black cowboys made up a significant part of cattle drives, often taking the most dangerous jobs. Mexican vaqueros, masters of horsemanship and ranching, introduced nearly every technique associated with cowboy culture. Native Americans were forced to fight, flee, or assimilate as settlers took their lands. And women, fierce, resourceful, and often undocumented, built lives in silence. None of these people made it into Pecos Bill's world. His version of the West had no space for reality. There were no scalpings, no massacres, no sweat or struggle, only slapstick showdowns with outlaws and tornadoes. But this wasn't an oversight. By presenting the West as a playground for one mythical white cowboy, American culture stripped its frontier of the very people who built it. This wasn't just historical laziness. It was design. The lie had a function. If you can rewrite the past as heroic, then you never have to confront what was done to get there. In this whitewash fantasy, Bill doesn't just conquer the land. He tames it. He controls the wilderness, bends rivers, wrestles lightning. It's a subtle but powerful narrative. Nature exists to be dominated by the right kind of man. But in truth, the taming of the West was a blood-soaked campaign. Entire tribes were exterminated or relocated. Mexicans who once owned the land were pushed into poverty. Black cowboys were relegated to side roles or erased completely from stories. These weren't just casualties of time. They were edited out to fit a cleaner myth. Mini twist. In 1950, the U.S. government funded a national cowboy heritage campaign to promote American values during the Cold War. Guess which cowboy became a recurring face? Pecos Bill, heroic, white, invincible. The real West, the one full of tension, diversity, and violence, was buried deeper under propaganda. While Pecos Bill howled with laughter atop a cyclone, entire communities were silenced. Even the cowboy hat, once a symbol of multicultural frontier life, became a costume of a myth that never existed. So now we must ask, was Pecos Bill just a goofy exaggeration, or was he America's carefully chosen replacement for the truth? And if that's the case, what happens when a nation builds its identity on a lie? Pecos Bill didn't just tell funny stories. He carried symbols that reshaped how America saw itself. His lasso, made from a rattlesnake, wasn't just a clever twist. It was a symbol of conquering nature, danger, and even death. The tornado he rides isn't chaos. It's a challenge to be tamed. Bill doesn't flee from the storm. He owns it. In a land built on stolen soil and violent expansion, he becomes the idealized image of a man who doesn't ask questions, he just takes. Every exaggerated activist was designed to look heroic. But beneath the surface, it celebrated dominance as virtue. Even the way he was raised, by coyotes wild and free, told audiences that he was beyond civilization, yet destined to rule over it. That's not just a tall tale. It's a narrative that repositions violence and lawlessness as natural stepping stones to greatness. There's no accountability in Pecos Bill's world, no moral reckoning. When he conquers, it's funny. When others resist, it's savage. The silence surrounding these contradictions isn't accidental. It's part of the myth. The joke becomes a shield. Laughter covers erasure. Every time a child giggles at Bill's antics, a real voice disappears from history. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. Pecos Bill is a whitewashing machine disguised as folklore. His exaggerated powers aren't just for spectacle. They're exaggerations designed to overshadow real people and real pain. His battles aren't against real enemies. They're stand-ins for nature, for indigenous presence, for cultural difference. The woman he marries, Slewfoot Sue, rides a giant catfish and is humiliated for her independence. Her role? To reinforce Bill's dominance and masculinity. The story punishes her, not because she's bad, but because she dares to stand next to him. Mini twist. In early scripts of radio plays, lines that included indigenous references were intentionally removed or softened. Scholars later found memos from producers urging writers to avoid discomfort for white audiences. The silence in Pecos Bill's story isn't just omission, it's a curated absence. An engineered void where conflict, guilt, and truth should be. This isn't just folklore. It's propaganda by omission. So now we face the quiet question the myth was never meant to answer. If Pecos Bill is a symbol of pride, then what does that say about the things he was designed to erase? Legends shape memory. And in America, few legends have done more to bury reality than Pecos Bill. Behind the laugh and the lasso, his story rewrote the script of the Wild West, replacing pain with parody, erasing complexity with cartoon bravado. The real cowboys, the ones who lived and bled in that brutal land, were dark-skinned, multilingual, and rooted in survival. But that didn't fit the narrative America wanted. So it created a man who could rope a cyclone but never confront a truth. Pecos Bill didn't just become folklore. He became a shield, a smokescreen. What we forget, or we're taught to forget, is that myths are never neutral. They serve someone. Pecos Bill served a vision of the West where whiteness was default, violence was comedy, and control was destiny. That's why he became the face of the frontier, not because he reflected it, but because he rewrote it. His absurdity wasn't an accident. It was camouflage. In laughing at him, we stopped asking who got left out, who got erased, who still hasn't been named. And those silences echoed louder than the howls of any tornado. It would be comforting to leave Pecos Bill in the realm of jokes and bedtime stories. But doing so means letting the myth keep winning. His legacy isn't just about fiction. It's about power, cultural power, narrative power, the ability to tell the story so loud and so often that no other version can breathe. But now that we know better, we can ask harder questions, not just about Bill, but about every story built to distract, to simplify, to dominate. Who created it? Who benefits from it? Who vanishes because of it? Mini twist. In recent years, scholars have begun recovering the lives of real cowboys erased by the legend. Men like Nat Love, Bose Eichert, and Isom Dart. Their stories are raw, complex, and human. They weren't riding tornadoes. They were surviving brutality. And that, maybe, is the real miracle of the West. Not the man who made rivers retreat, but the people who kept going despite every system designed forget them. So as we close the book on Pecos Bill, maybe we should stop asking what made him legendary and start asking what made everyone else invisible. Because the real story of the Wild West isn't about one man who tamed chaos, but about a nation that invented him to hide what it had already done. If this story made you rethink what you thought you knew, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, which myth do you think hides the most truth? More stories like this are on the way, and some of them are even darker than this one. Want to support this work and help uncover more hidden histories? Consider becoming a channel member and be part of the mission. The truth is out there, and we're just getting started.